The YouTube channel Cajun has a great video covering their focus formula. They talk about what you should do to achieve focus. However, I think some of their advice is better for professionals working rather than students learning. In this video, I want to talk about some of the nuance of focus for learning. And at the end, I'll give a concrete demo in the Omni app. Let's get started. The first problem with Cajun focus formula is that it won't impress your friends. Alternatively, I want to introduce the VD-CL-SR-MBB formula.
Impressive.
Cajun references the flow literature.
Stephen Kotler describes this in his flow research. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's chart shows the familiar sweet spot highlighted here.
But is that right? On the left, we have flow, and on the right, we have vigilance. In psychology, flow is performing well, and then afterwards feeling nearly euphoric. Vigilance is continuously concentrating on a stimuli. Flow is characterized by timelessness, loss of self, and hyperfocus. It's been hypothesized to come from hypofrontality, which correlates with a lack of higher order functioning. Vigilance is characterized by attention depletion over time and lots of cognitive load. Which of these two sounds more like high-quality learning? Well, here's what we know about good learning. Higher order thinking improves learning quality. Open-ended, difficult problems improve learning quality. And finally, feeling good about your learning might indicate it was too easy, not that it was high quality. From that, I think when learning, we want to think more about maintaining vigilance. Another way to look at flow is that it's an effect, not a cause. In psychology, flow is generally self-reported after the fact. So people who felt productive because they got things done will self-report having been in flow, whereas someone who didn't feel productive won't. It's not that they were productive because they were in flow, it's that they reported being in flow because they were productive. This is my argument against flow in the Flowmodoro technique you may have seen on YouTube. It's not for learning, it's for producing or performing. I know this feels pedantic, but it does have real implications. The advice on flow, like Cajun focus formula, is mostly focused on getting into flow. All that advice is, it's actually good, but there's an assumption that if you get into flow, you're good to go. If we evaluate this from a vigilance perspective, we're really missing recommendations for how to maintain focus, or in other words, how to delay vigilance decrement. There are two theories of vigilance decrement: underload and overload. Underload argues we lose focus due to being bored. Overload argues we lose focus due to depleted cognitive resources. There's a lot of research on vigilance enhancement through training, meditation, caffeine, fragrances, and other things. But for learning, I want to focus on one thing: maintaining high-quality cognitive load. Cajun message about cognitive load needs clarification.
So our framework was designed around cognitive load theories. And by offloading a lot of that cognitive load to AI, we can focus on the most important part of learning, the critical thinking. That's AI.
It's convenient to look at three types of cognitive load: germane, intrinsic, and extraneous. For learning, we can think of these as good, neutral, and bad. Germane cognitive load comes from constructing mental models. We want to increase this. For intrinsic cognitive load, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
For example, a problem with 10 variables requires more mental resources than a problem with 1. Extraneous cognitive load is unhelpful, like how reading bad handwriting is hard but doesn't help you learn. Knowing this, let's go back to a different Cajun video.
Pulling analogies out of thin air is not easy, and it requires a lot of cognitive load to come up with something that actually fits into the skeleton. So why not remove that friction and ask ChatGPT?
Coming up with your own personal analogy is a form of elaboration, which is learning by connecting new information to existing information in your head. Creating these connections is a clear example of germane cognitive load. So instead of asking ChatGPT to do it, we should at least attempt to create it ourselves. Okay, not very hard, right? Increase good load and decrease bad load. Maybe. I've got a curveball for you. Metacognition is thinking about thinking. It takes up mental resources, but is key to high-quality learning. However, it doesn't directly create cognitive schema like elaboration does. So, is it extraneous cognitive load? Well, it depends. Let's picture our learning time as before, during, after, and a break. During learning, we want to maximize germane load by doing things like elaboration and retrieval. So sure, let's offload some metacognition. Specifically, we can use a Pomodoro timer so we don't have to self-monitor energy, and a notepad so we don't have to remember metacognitive thoughts. However, after, when the Pomodoro timer goes off, metacognition should be our primary focus. All our cognitive resources should be focused on reflecting on ourselves and our learning progress. And we could say this about before, too. Metacognition comes before. What else comes before?
The disclaimer here is that this method won't work if you're too sleepy, exhausted, sick, hungry, or any other physiological condition.
There's a saying in education, Maslow before Bloom. It refers to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Bloom's taxonomy for learning. One way to think about it would be to put Bloom's taxonomy at the top of Maslow's hierarchy. For teachers, this means that if students aren't fed and don't feel safe, it's really unlikely they'll be doing any type of higher order learning. That's a lot of theory. I'll do a concrete demo. In Omni, we have a focus session. It's broken into before, during, and after. Each is a checklist that we can customize by adding new items or moving items around. Before, we want to go through our checklist and do things like fill up our water bottle, set a goal, and set a Pomodoro timer. During, we have a distraction sheet for offloading metacognitive load. While mind mapping, we get a little Pomodoro timer in the top right for offloading metacognitive load. After, we reflect on our energy, reflect how long to break, and think about what we can improve next time.